So this is actually a student venture example from Bill's book. And Associated Gas Energy does something crazy. They convert energy that comes. They convert gas from oil drilling into crude oil, and they figure that the cost of doing this, there's a lot of gas essentially that comes out as a byproduct of drilling oil, and which generally goes to waste because it's tough to transport it. And what they figured is that you can potentially convert this gas into crude oil at about $70, right? And so if the price of oil is much higher than that, then it actually makes sense to be doing this, right? And so they've worked out their cost of customer acquisition here. And so keep in mind the type of business this is, right? So this is, they're selling a high-end service to the oil industry, and it's a B2B, right? So they're relying more on business development and salespeople rather than anything else, right? Because you got to go and pitch to these companies essentially. And so they've mapped out for their first 3 years the number of salespeople and number of tech support for doing this, right? And so they're saying that the number of salespeople and the number of tech support people is the same. First year they're going to have 1, second year 2, third year 3. They've taken into account salaries for these 2 people and travel, entertainment, events, website costs, consultant total, right? And just added it up and taken the COCA for each of the years. If you then take the net present here, no, so here you're actually looking at your cost of customer acquisition for that year versus the long-term value of acquiring customers for that particular year, right? So if your LTV, let's say, was, let's just assume this is 400,000 to make the math simple. And so if your LTV for customers in year 1 was $1 million, then you're at that ratio of 2.5, and you need to figure out a way to get to that sort of magic number of 3, right? Just as an example. Now, so this is a business to business where you're selling a high-end product or service, right? We'll go through a couple other examples to just remind people again what COCA is. This is your cost of customer acquisition, which means it's the sum of your sales and marketing expenses divided by the number of customers, right? And so in year 1, your total, so they don't have any, it's more about sales for them. Marketing is close to nothing, right? And so year 1, it's 394,000 divided by 1. Year 2, it's 709 divided by 3, and you see it trending down to this 147. So over time, what should happen is as your business grows, your COCA should trend down, right? So when you start, it's unlikely that your ratio is 3 to start with, but there should be a plan in the next 2 years or so to get to that number. This is a more relevant example for you guys. This is from Philby, which focuses on interior design. And so what they've done, and this is a little hard to read, but I'll just speak through it, is they came up with a digital marketing strategy and more of a digital sales strategy with very clear use of funds, right? This sort of detail is fantastic. So what they've said is they're going to use consumer targeted marketing, out of which they have a budget for inbound marketing as well as outbound marketing. Do you guys know what that is? Everyone know inbound versus outbound? Or not? All right, so inbound is where you're creating content that is valuable to your customers, and so they find you because you're creating value through content that you're producing and sharing, right? HubSpot focuses on this type of marketing, and they do it best in the world, right? Then you've got outbound marketing, which is where you're putting out ads using platforms such as Facebook, Pinterest, potentially Google, right? And then you've got, so then they've got designer targeted marketing here. where they're looking to target designers specifically using platforms such as LinkedIn, right? Attending trade shows would come under that as well. Whoops. Give me a sec, guys.
Need a plug?
Yeah.
Is this yours?
No, I have it here. So the LinkedIn targeted marketing could be quite relevant to some of you. I don't know if it'll feature with your solution, but it's actually a very powerful way to find exactly the right people for what you're looking for. Then they've got retailer marketing partnerships, right? So they're spending on designathons and offline catalog as well as in-store linking. And they're taking the sum of these budgets as their total marketing budget. Now, with respect to their sales strategy, let's look at what they're doing there. So lead segmentation. Segment lead by source, optimized landing pages, dynamic onboarding. So this is all digital, right? They're not paying a sales guy to go out and sell. They're spending on digital platforms so that they get the best leads that they can. Second is in-platform promotions, right? So these are sales discounts. So in terms of discounts, how much are they going to give away to customers? Around 50,000. And third is customer checkout. And so these are things such as shopping cart reminders, right? So it's entirely digitally viewed, both from a sales and marketing perspective, and wonderfully broken down. So you can see the total spend is $390,000 US. The number of customers that they expect from this is 5,000. And so the cost of customer acquisition is $78 for them. So this is the type of thing that if you can get to a plan such as this as to how you want to sell, this is terrific. Okay, so how do you reduce COCA? So you're trying to maximize LTV, you're trying to minimize COCA, right? And so the first line, while very powerful, use direct sales judiciously as it's expensive, right? So to pay a salesperson, it's expensive to hire someone good at that job, right? It's generally north of 150,000 US dollars. And we also live in a world where there are very many more newer avenues to sell effectively, right? And so you can optimize and maximize that. Second, automate as much as possible. Once you figure out what is working, if you can automate it, A, it becomes scalable, and so you get to reach more people in the same time, and B, you generally reduce costs doing so. Improve conversion rates in sales, right? And so this is really, as you sort of understand your sales funnel better and what is working and what's not, you focus on what's working and learn from what's not, right? But if you learn that something is really working very well, and if you have a finite budget, so let's go back to this for instance, right? And if you learn that parts of your strategy, let's say your inbound marketing is just getting you a lot of customers coming to you, right? And working much better than, say, designer targeted marketing or partnerships with retailers, right? Could you go back to your budget and say, hey, do I really need to spend 100,000 here and 50,000 here, or can I shave off some and really make this 100,000, double down on what's working and driving results, and reduce your COCA instead of investing in stuff that's not working? This is also, there's a strategic side to this, right? Because you might need these long-term retailer partnerships, and so you just have to weigh that. But if there are ways for you to double down on what's working, generally that adds a lot of value. Would you agree, Don?
Yeah.
All right. Decrease cost of leads and improve quality of leads, right? So this all comes back to the fact that the more experiments you can run as to what works, the better your sales funnel gets, right? And so the more you test and the more you measure, you can then invest in what is doing well versus what's not. What's critical is not just your conversion rate and your cost of leads, but how quickly you can get through that sales funnel, right? And this comes back to the fact that if you sell at a lower price, sometimes you can really sell much quicker than going through a larger decision-making unit in a business, things like that.
It's sort of like thinking about inventory returns. Or if you
Oh yes,
spend
inventory
money-
turns.
If you spend money to get leads, but you haven't converted them, you sort of have capital tied up or value tied up. So the faster you get them through, the quicker you get a return.
One of the key factors with respect to a company's return on equity for a lot of businesses that work on inventory really come down to how high they can drive inventory turns, right? And so if they can really maximize that return on equity starts to go up very quickly. All right, your last two, most important, is really focus on marketing and sales to your specific target market. And the better you can do that, the more you're going to drive value and drive down COCA. Finally, word of mouth. This is just the best way to sell, right? So if you provide a fantastic customer experience, and if they become sort of advocates for what you're selling, that's just the best way to get your business off the ground. I'm going to play this from Dollar Shave Club. Don't know how many of you guys have seen it. Play to your strengths and communicate your value proposition. Have you guys seen this? That allowed them to compete with Gillette. So these guys really figured out what their value proposition was, right? And it comes down to a line which he says, shave time, save money, right? And just goes on to explain the fact that you've been paying so much for these razors, and do you really need like all this cool functionality with your razor, or do you need a good regular shave? And you need it at your doorstep, so you never have to worry about going out to get razors ever again in your life, right? And so he essentially plays to their strengths. It's a brilliant marketing video, and all they did was invested in creating this and helping this go viral, right? So they just went pretty much all out with saying what their value proposition was, explaining it wonderfully, and then using digital media to drive this where they could to their target customers. And it worked like a charm. It really worked like a charm. Look at that, 25 million views, right? So if you get your value proposition across in a strong, creative way, that just means that you might not have to spend a whole lot of money on sales and marketing to get your messaging out, right? All right.